The topic for today is to talk about the midterm exam and essay number one. I've talked about essay number one previously before we finished Othello, but I do want to go a little more in depth into the different topics today that you can choose from for your paper, because maybe you want to start that, choosing a topic and start outlining or thinking about how you want to answer your chosen question. But let's start with the midterm study guide, because I know that you all are anxiously awaiting information on our midterm. Probably you couldn't even sleep last night waiting for it to drop. And here it is. So what I did was, to create this study guide, I went to the midterm that the department at STC created. I'm going to modify it slightly because it covers the stuff that I have put, some of the stuff that I've pushed past spring break. So I don't want that to be on the exam. So I'm going to go in and change that. And I also want to change the midterm that they have to include some of the other specific quotations that I pulled out on the study guides. But in any case, I'm going to be running the midterm pretty much the way that they have it. So let me go through the logistics of it. I have the chat open, so if you have a question, I'll be glad to respond to it, or you could unmute and let me know that you have a question. But I want you to understand, it's 2 weeks before the midterm opens, so I want to make sure that you have enough time to study, you know what the test is going to be like, what you'll be expected to do, what it's going to ask you, all of that sort of stuff. And that's what this document is for. So the first thing is just a reminder that the midterm is counts as 20% of the course grade. Same thing as the final. So the midterm and the final together are 40% of the course. So it's a significant percentage of your overall grade. It's equivalent to the research paper, and it's equivalent to all of the discussions put together in terms of weight for the semester. So I just wanted to remind you of that. You know, maybe make a study plan. Start thinking to yourself, okay, well, it's broken into 3 units, so I could maybe make some time this weekend to really dig back into unit 1 and study, and then next weekend I can do number 2. Like, maybe you could make a little plan for yourself, or set up a study buddy system. You know, their study groups are a great way to review material together. Make one person, you know, like the Uber student for unit 1, somebody else in your group number 2, and somebody else number 3. And then when you get together, you can go through that material together, and one person will have really dug into it and help the others. You know, I've seen that be effective, but there are lots of ways to study. I don't think anybody's ever told me in my whole career that they wish they hadn't studied that much. So usually it's like, I wish I had studied more. So keep that in mind. The way this test works is that we're not going to sit down on Zoom and take the test. You're going to take the test when you're ready, during the window of Wednesday, March 10th and Saturday, March 13th. And I've blocked that out on the calendar. Where's March? We are not going to have class on Thursday the 11th or Friday the 12th, because that's the midterm window. So you have from, I think I set it up to open on Wednesday at 8 a.m. and then it closes on Saturday at 11:59 p.m. So you have any time in there to take your test. It is not timed. So you can take as long as you need to for your test, but you have to complete it in one sitting. In other words, you can't save it and come back to it tomorrow. It won't let you do that. So it'll just submit and you'll have a whole bunch of unanswered questions. So give yourself like an open-ended time frame, so that if you start, like if you start at 10 and you have a class at 12:30, I think you might be pressed for finishing. You know, give yourself a time when you don't, doesn't matter when you finish, is what I'm saying. Because you can have as much time as you want. We will not be using a lockdown browser. I don't understand why people use lockdown browsers, to be honest with you, because I feel like if you could use your phone. Matter of fact, I'm not going to be monitoring you in any way for this test. So if it was me, off the record, I would use my notes. Hopefully you have good ones. And I would use that to help me on the test. but that's just how I would do it because nobody's saying you can't use your notes. Um, the the issue of connectivity for the internet, I want to address that because I know there's some people that still have some unstable situations, or maybe they always have since we started doing this virtual stuff. If you feel like it would be better for you and your internet, or for whatever reason you want to come and take your midterm here at school, I know that at first thought that might not seem great, but if you have a shaky internet, I'm worried that you're going to start the test, your internet goes out, and it's going to close you out of the test because you have to finish it in one sitting. So if you're in a situation where you would like to come up, even if you're not, even if you haven't selected hybrid, I already talked to administration. I can have you come in for whatever frame of time works for you. You can sit in my classroom, or we can find a different location in the library for you or something, masks, and bring your laptop or your Chromebook, and you can do it here if you want to. So to avoid an issue if you have connectivity problems, you just have to reach out, let me know that you want to do that, and we'll set up a time for that to occur during that window. So just keep that in mind. Those are your options, and you choose the time that's best for you to take the midterm. Now, about the construction of the test. So the test is all written. There's no multiple choice. There isn't any true false or any matching or any of that sort of thing. It is all written. So there will be 15 short answer questions. What they mean by short answer is that you'll answer in like small sized paragraph, 4 to 5 sentences. What you'll be presented with on those questions, there are 15 of them, is a term, a concept, a quotation, or a person. And you'll have to do 3 things. First, define and explain. Then identify a piece of literature that relates to that term or that item. And then explain how it relates to that piece of literature. So say, for example, one of the terms on the midterm is indulgences. So it'll say, define indulgences, identify what piece of literature it relates to, and explain how the term relates to that piece of literature. So I would go with Canterbury Tales, right? The Pardoner's Tale. And I would talk about how the Pardoner it was his job to sell indulgences and how he did, So 4 or 5 sentences demonstrating that I know how the concept of indulgences works with that piece of literature. It would be wrong to associate indulgences with Beowulf or with Othello. So there's only one that it really works with. So I did go to the midterm, and all of those terms, concepts, quotations, or people, I pretty much listed all of them underneath in the next part, which is the different units. So all of the terms and concepts associated with the Anglo-Saxon and Middle Ages, I'm giving them to you here. So if you look at this list and you go, oh, I know what all those things are and how they relate to the different pieces of literature, then you'll probably be fine on the test. But if you look at it and you go, I don't remember who Thomas Becket is, you better look it up before the test because you might end up getting that one. And what I mean by you might end up getting that one is you're going to get 15 short answers, but there's like 100 in the database, and it's just going to plop out random 15 to you. I don't know which ones you're going to get. So I put all of them on here so that you could prepare. The next, any questions on the short answer? Okay, then there will be 5 essays. Those are 10 points each. They use the term essay, but they just mean longer response because it's not really an essay. It's like at least 10 sentences. They want you to go a little more in depth on these, and that's why they're worth 10 points instead of 3 points. So on these, they're more like the discussion questions that we've been doing, where they're asking you to compare things and write about qualities of different pieces of literature. So that's what those are more like. Compare aspects of 2 works that we've studied, interpret, analyze, and apply to readings. On these, the more specific you are, the more points you can get. So if you answer, let's just say one of the questions might be something like the first discussion question we had that asked you to compare the qualities of a hero in Beowulf to the qualities of a hero in Gawain. And if that's your question, then if you can only speak generally about those 2 works and you can't say when Beowulf goes to defeat the dragon, and he does this and that and the other thing, and you can point out exactly what happens in that text, then it's going to be a low score. The more you can talk about the nuances and the little details that are in the text, the better the score will be as you apply those things. For obvious reasons, the whole point of the midterm is to demonstrate that you've read and internalized the material. There'll be one final essay that's worth 5 points where I will give you a new poem that we haven't studied. And with that poem, you'll have to write a few sentences about the qualities of the poem itself, you know, like the speaker situation, the form, figurative language. Might have to come up with a theme. Not all those things, but it will probably be 1 or 2 of those things depending on the poem, because there's different poems that you might get. And then you'll have to identify the period. So you'll have to look at it and be able to tell, oh, well, that's a medieval poem, or that is for sure a Renaissance poem. And I know because I know the qualities of Renaissance poetry. We just wrote about it in our last discussion. So you'll have to nail it down. If you give you a poem and it's supposed to be from the Renaissance, hi, okay, and it's from the Renaissance, but you say that it's Anglo-Saxon, then that's just going to be wrong, because there are clues, and we've been studying the qualities of those different pieces of literature all the way through. So that's the basic structure of the test. Are there any questions about that? I think if I was going to take the test, I would probably take about 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer than 2 hours, to make sure that I had done a good job. But I already know all this material. So I don't know. If you study well, it will probably take you less time to do it than if you don't. So, or maybe if you don't study, then it's easy because there'll be questions that you can't answer. But in any case, the point is that I want you to be as prepared as possible, and I'm here to help you do that. I don't see any questions in the chat about that stuff. All right, after that on the study guide, you'll see that I've taken each unit and broken it down so that you know, like you have a little hub of what to study. You don't have to spend time going back and trying to find stuff on Blackboard or the calendar and trying to put it together. I already brought it together here for you so you can spend your time studying. So I listed the major pieces from that period, the background material that we looked at for that, including any PowerPoints that I might have presented or videos that I made. Pardon me. I think I'm talking fast or something. And then the terms that may show up on your test. I don't know which ones you're going to get, but these are all the possibilities. Then after that is a link to the study guides. They're linked in the Blackboard, and they're linked on the calendar, but I just put them all in one place so it would be handy for you. Here's the study guide that we went over in class for Beowulf and Gawain. Here's the one for Canterbury Tales. And then the next little unit is there with the same structure. So the textbook pages are there. You can go back to that. You can go back to the slideshow I might have done and refresh your memory about any of those things. So if there are terms that aren't in this background material, I put them here. And then the study guides. Next week, we're starting the restoration, and we will not be finishing that unit before the midterm. We will only be reading the first piece, which is Paradise Lost. We're not reading all of Paradise Lost. We're reading the first 2 books or first 2 chapters of Paradise Lost. And that will be finished right before the midterm. And we will pick up with Unit 3 when we get back from spring break. I'll go back to the calendar for a second. Because of the weather situation, I had to move things around a little bit. And originally, we would have been finishing Gulliver's Travels just prior to the midterm exam. We'd be finished with all of Unit 3, but that's not going to happen. So I need to take off of the midterm all of the things about Gulliver's Travels, and we'll look at that when we get back and finish up Unit 3 then. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't want to put something on the test that we haven't worked through. So Paradise Lost will be the end of the material for the midterm. All right, and you can see that I have that on here. I did not put the rest of the material for Unit 3 because it's not on the midterm. It will be in the unit that I'm about to post but it's not on the study guide because you don't need to study it for the exam. Are there any questions on the study guide or the test itself? I'm trying to think if there's anything I forgot to tell you about it. No. Don't see anything in the chat. Hopefully you find that helpful. Save a copy and use it if you want to. Like I could see where you might download a copy of this and, you know, like make this into like little definitions for yourself, and then you could literally study from this page or whatever, you know. There's lots of ways you can use that to your advantage. Okay. I don't see anything on the midterm. I can ask you about it again next week, how it's coming with your studying, if there's anything else you want me to talk about with the midterm. Also today we wanted to talk about essay number 1, which is not due until the 21st. I had to push that one back a couple of weeks so that it didn't conflict with the midterm. So it's not due really until the 21st of March. In a way, that's good because it gives you more time to think about your paper and what you want to do for your topic because you have choices. In a way, it's not good because I don't like making something due on the Sunday as spring break is ending. It makes me feel like I'm telling you to work on it over spring break, but at least you'll have the option if you want to. For me, I would probably, you know, start figuring out a topic and then break it down into different tasks so that each week I had a goal and that I wouldn't have to do it like all over spring break. And I could, you know, maybe just do some final touches for an hour or two and be done. But, you know, it's up to you. Use your time whatever way you need to. It's not due until the 21st. So if you open that document, I talked about this the week before the winter storm closure, but I want to go into a little more detail today because we've finished the play now, and now there's probably a better understanding of these different topics that you can choose from. This is a small paper, it's 4 to 6 pages, but it's all of your own ideas. There's no research involved in this paper, with the exception of the case of you might need to inform yourself about something before you approach the paper. And I'll talk number 4, the option number 4 might require that of you, but that information doesn't go into the paper. It's just so that you have background knowledge so that you can write the paper, if that makes sense. This is all about your ideas about the play. So let's go through the 5 topics that you can choose from. You can also propose to me if you have a different topic that you want to do. And if that's the case, you should probably come up with the concept for that paper fairly soon and share it with me so that we can refine it or, you know, discuss it, or I can okay it or whatever. So here are the other 5 though that you have to choose from. The first one says compare 1 to 2 Shakespearean sonnets to monologues or soliloquies in Othello that share a common theme, like love, jealousy, betrayal. What arguments is Shakespeare making about the themes you address? So this is where you will go into the play and you'll look for places where Iago is speaking to the audience about his plans, or when Othello is doing a monologue about how he came to love Desdemona in Act 1. So you look for those places in the text, and then you need to find a Shakespearean sonnet that overlaps with that. It's not hard to do that. There's a lot of the sonnets are in your textbook or in that text PDF, but there are a lot of websites too about Shakespeare sonnets. So you could just pretty much Google Shakespeare sonnets about jealousy and it will come up with which ones those are. And you can then work with the poem. You don't have to read 153 sonnets to try to figure out which ones go with the monologue or the soliloquies that you're choosing. So then whatever the common theme is between the sonnet and the play, that's what you're writing about. So if you want to write about jealousy and you find a Shakespearean sonnet that's about jealousy, then what are the arguments that Shakespeare's making in both of those pieces? Number 2 is about the topic of war. Hopefully you're noticing that war, love, jealousy, betrayal are the types of things that I've had at the bottom of the study guide in that list of 10 for every act that we've been studying of Othello. because I thought if I got you to think about that, you'd have a head start, not just on the midterm, but also on paper. So this one is about how the topic of war becomes a complex concern for Othello when he returns. What they mean by Othello's return is in Act 1, he's coming back from war. And that's when he, marries Desdemona. He's just returned from war. So that's what they mean by that. How is war complex for him now that he's not at war? He is settling down. He's in a world where he no longer can define himself by war, especially after they go to Cyprus and there's not going to be a war. So the suggestion is there that maybe that's part of Othello's problem, is the domestic life. And so you can explore that. They even suggest that if you wanted to, you could compare Othello as a warrior to Beowulf or even Gawain. You could do a compare contrast in that aspect. Number 3 is about the torment of love and the insidiousness of jealousy and mistrust. So that's an eternal issue. That is also an existential problem. They use the term existential right here. I can do a talk, or I can meet with you a little bit on existentialism, or you can look up online. Let me give you a 1-minute explanation of existentialism so that you can kind of decide if you want to work on number 3. Existentialism is a concept, it's a 20th century concept. So we're not talking about something that Shakespeare would have perceived or the characters would have perceived. Existentialism is a philosophical idea that it's kind of like a lens. We would take it from our time and apply it back to Shakespeare's work. Existentialism says that there's no meaning in life that is true for everyone. Because there's no specific meaning of life, everybody can create meaning the way that they see fit. So your existence is up to you. And what you find important is your choice. How you decide to order the world for yourself is up to you. Some people choose religion to do that. And some people choose their work to do that. Some people choose astrology to do that. Whatever way you choose to order your world and your existence is up to you, but you have to live by the consequences of that decision. So if I decide that Catholicism is the way that I want to make meaning out of my life, and I'm going to follow all of the rules and guidelines of that particular religious belief, I'm free to do that. But whatever the consequences are in that belief system, I have to follow them, right? And so whatever consequences happen as a result of my sins or whatever's perceived in that religious belief, I have to suffer the consequences of that. Maybe I decide that the way that my existence makes sense is to be a serial killer. I wouldn't recommend that one, but I have to then live with the consequences of those actions, which might mean, jail or execution or what have you. So existentialism is just a way of looking at life that says life doesn't have inherent meaning. We bring meaning to our lives and we get to choose that. So it's a little bit about identity too, and that's kind of where this question goes. It says, the torment of love and the insidiousness of jealousy and mistrust are existential problems we all face. We all face those things because we exist. It's the human nature. Explore how the play makes us confront these eternal problems through the tale of Othello and Desdemona. So how is the torment of love that we all experience personified in that relationship? What important turning points regarding the torment of love in the play lead to the final tragedy? And if those had been avoided, how would the play have been different if they had made different choices? So what are the main points where that could have happened? 4 is about race and otherness. Otherness is a term. It's a real term. I know it sounds like a made up thing, but otherness is a term that we use sort of like in psychological circles in literature too, to explain the oddball, right? This oddball is not a positive term, but the one who's different from everyone else in some way. Either your thoughts are different. You've probably been in an environment where the people around you thought a certain way and you don't think that way, or the people around you looked a certain way and you don't look that way. So that's otherness, just being different from the surroundings. Obviously, they're probably referencing Othello, who is not from Venice and isn't Venetian and is Black. So there are issues in the play surrounding race and otherness. This question ties into the history of England and immigration and assimilating different races into the nation. So you might have to, on this one, do a little background. It says, explain how these complex problems in English society are coming up in Othello. The problem that people had with, say, calling a Black Moor a Venetian and things like that. So how does that relate to England and English society? So you might have to research a little bit, what were the racial fears in Elizabethan England? What were people afraid of when they saw someone of a different race or a different background or an otherness, a person with otherness? So you might have to do that first, and then you would just inform yourself, and then you would write the paper from your own concept. You wouldn't be quoting from those sources that you used to inform yourself. The last one is about evil. The problem of evil is hotly debated in a play like Othello. How should we understand the problem of evil, suffering, and temptation in Shakespeare's work? The problem of evil is a philosophical problem. It's an actual thing that people discuss. The idea being, if God is a benevolent God, why is there evil in the world? Or just even without the God part, why is there evil in the world? What purpose does it serve? So how do we understand the problem of evil in Othello? Focusing on probably Iago. He's sort of like the #1 evil guy in the play, in a lot of plays. What kind of evil does he represent? And does he have different types of evil? And what are his evil levels you could write about? And those are the 5 options. And then you have the 6th one to develop your own if you would like. Are there any of those that you want me to talk about a little bit more? Okay, if you think of something, you can just email me and ask me. I'm pretty good with that stuff. Down here, there are a few notes. There's also the rubric. This rubric is just the same rubric that we had for the literary analysis paper in the first semester. Same thing that we're looking for. Nobody really had problems with the majority of these things. If people had problems, it was mainly in details and, follow through on the thesis, but that's the rubric. And there's also some reminders here. Successful essays will analyze, not merely summarize. There shouldn't be much summary in your paper at all. Assume that the person reading your paper already knows the play, has already read it, maybe they taught it, I don't know. And you can assume that you don't have to go and give a whole bunch of background about what's happening in the play. If you do that in your paper, whatever part of that happens, I'm ignoring, because it's not really answering those questions that are up top. It's just summarization. So if you summarize for 1/3 of your paper, then there's 1/3 of your paper that I'm just not considering as part of your answer to the question. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, there might be some times where you have to say, in the scene when Desdemona does this and this, like just to direct your reader to a certain event, or maybe you're going to quote or something like that. That's fine. That's not summary. That's like pointing in a direction. It's giving a location in the text. So it says here, essays that are mostly summary will not earn higher than a D, which is a 60. So don't do it. If you want to, you can do a draft. We've got a few weeks, or start a draft. And if you're worried about summary, just shoot it to me and say, hey, can you read this and let me know if I'm summarizing too much? And I'll read it and I'll email you back and say, yes, you're summarizing too much. Here are some things you should do instead. And I'll give you feedback and some help so you can improve on that. I gotta say that the people who take advantage of sending their papers to me for different reasons tend to make A's, because I already told them all the things that they needed to work on, and they worked on them, and then they turned in the paper. So the people who wait until later to do their paper and don't have the opportunity to turn it in for feedback, sometimes they make A's, but in general, usually they're more toward the midpoint. Also remember that we're not using outside sources. All the ideas in the paper should be your own thoughts about the play. Your works cited should just be Othello, and that's it, because you'll probably quote from the play somewhere in those 4 to 6 pages, unless you're doing number 1. If you're doing number 1, you might also have on your works cited whatever sonnet that you used to do the comparison. But that's it, only primary texts, not secondary sources like articles or websites or books. You're not using any of that. The second paper does that. All right. Questions on the paper? Hello, are you in there? Hello? No? No questions? I guess I explained it thoroughly. No questions. Okay. Yeah, I know it's annoying for the teachers to always be like, do you have any questions? But it's because I'm used to seeing it on everybody's face. Like I can tell if they have questions or if they don't. So I don't know in this blind world. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it for today. On Tuesday next week, we can watch the film if you want. On Tuesday next week, we're going to start in with the next unit, unit number 3, the Restoration in the 18th century. I'm going to give you some poetry. You don't have to read anything for Tuesday. These are the pages that are about the next time period that we're going to look at, but I'll do a PowerPoint on that day that kind of distills that down. And then I'll show you some of the 17th century poetry. So there isn't really a reading assignment for Tuesday. So maybe it's a good time to finish up your discussion 3 if you need to. I'm still waiting on some people to do that. You have incompletes on your report card, so you need to finish those. You have until Sunday to do that. You could maybe start looking at Paradise Lost. There's a reading assignment. There's 2 chapters that we're going to read. Book 1 is about 20 pages and book 2 about the same. So you could get started on reading those and preparing for those when they come up. You could start working on your ideas for discussion number 4, which is about Othello and humanism. When I reconfigured the course a little bit from the storm, I moved some of the discussions around so that it's like a week later that you're responding to the literature that we finished reading the week before. I think that will be better because you don't have to write about Othello the day after we finish talking about it. You know what I mean? You have some time to think about it. So there are some things that you could do to get ahead and prepare for next week, this week if you wanted to. All right. I'm going to switch over to the film then. There's like 40 minutes left in the film, but we only have about 20 minutes left in class. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play it. I don't know if you have a 4th period class or not. I'm going to play it from where we left off, which is sort of a little ways into Act 4. And if you want to stay and just watch the rest of it for 40 minutes, then that's fine. If you need to go at 1:30, then that's fine. If you want, you can go. I do have the film. It's here under course content. Oh, it was right there. Down here on the bottom, the film is in my Google Drive. I own the film, so I uploaded it here to my Google Drive, and you can finish watching it there too if you want to. So I'm going to start playing it. If you need to leave, just feel free to do that. And if you want to stay and just watch the whole thing, then you can do that too. All right. I don't see any questions, so I'll just say I hope you all have a good weekend in case you're not here when the film ends. All right, let me play it. If you watch it later. Enhance your understanding of the text, so that's the reason I'm playing it. My microphone isn't working. Is this one working now? Are you saying that you can't hear me? Oh, okay. Yeah, so all I was saying was that the test is about the text of the play, not the film. So I'm just showing the film so that you guys can get a view of the play, that kind of thing. Did you hear that part? Okay. All right, I'm gonna pick up where we left off right at the beginning of Act 4. It's loading.
Tell the tale anew, where this night I did not Alberto Cassio. God save you, worthy general. With all my heart, sir. The Duke and Senators of Venice greet you. I kiss the instrument of their pleasure. Welcome, Signor Gratian.